and I present a life project about forest. And here with me there is the coordinator of the project, Dr. Cantiani, and we will describe the socioeconomic impact of this project, which main aim is to demonstrate the positive effect that forest treatments, silvicultural treatment, can have to enhance the multifunctionality of black pine forest stands, which are typical forest stands in the Italian Apennine. And the life is under the umbrella of biodiversity. It's a 5 years long project, and that we will finish in the May of 2019. And the project is located in Italy in two different study areas. And the background is the situation that we have in a lot of forest stands that were established after the World War, with the main aim to establish forest stand in degraded soil and marginal soil. And now these stands are about 60, 50 years old, and the main aim and the main function of this stand today is the hydrogeological protection and protection against soil erosion. And this kind of forest stands are main spread in Italy, about 2,100 hectares, and often these forests are degraded and not stable, and very simplified forest system. And so I have to describe the main impact from the socioeconomic point of view. And we think that the main challenge from a socioeconomic point of view is to fight against the exodus from mountains that is a typical phenomenon after the urbanization, typical of mountain areas. And so in this situation, we have to find how to manage these forest stands with a multifunctional approach, able to increase the job opportunity in mountain, and able to increase the complexity and multifunctional role of this forest. And the approach is based on thinning, that are intervention of cutting forest, not at the end of the cultural cycle, but it's our intermediate cutting. And in our life project, we try to a kind of approach based on an equilibrium among different ecosystem services that forests are called to do. And so the approach is to work to realize thinning intervention, having the attention to maintain an equilibrium among cultural, provisioning, supporting, and regulating services that forests are able to make. And in our cases, we have wood and chip bioenergy production and wood production. We have biodiversity, climate change mitigation, but also the recreational value of this forest that are often peri-urban or urban forests. And so during the project, we realized concrete action of cutting, and so we selected some forests that where thinning is necessary, and we assessed some ecosystem services before the silviculture treatments. Then the thinning was realized, and after the intervention, ecosystem services were assessed again, and the comparison between before and post situation was realized. And our approach was to find the optimum point when we manage forest to have an equilibrium and a synergy between different role of forest, different services. For example, if after the forest cutting I harvest wood, the carbon stocked by forest is reduced, but the fire risk reduction is improved. So, and biodiversity sometimes is lost because deadwood in forest is an element that ensures biodiversity. And the idea was to find a point of harvesting, how we have to cut and how much wood we can cut to increase and to find an equilibrium among different ecosystem services. And these are the different situations we compared. No intervention, so a control. Traditional thinning, which was the traditional intervention where dominated trees are removed, but no significant effect was found on the canopy cover. And then this selective thinning, which is a new model of thinning, based on a positive selection of candidate trees and removal of competitors. And these are the two areas that are located in Tuscany, in central Italy, in the Apennine. And we analyzed the economic and social impact, but there was also an important effect, ecologic impact that was analyzed, and it was the impact on biodiversity. In fact, one of the main aims of our project was to measure biodiversity before and after thinning, and microbial biodiversity, mycological, mesofauna, and floristic biodiversity was assessed by different experts. And concerning the economic impact, the main use of this wood was bioenergy and chips production. So the idea was to quantify the volume of wood, and we quantified the volume before thinning, the harvested volume, so the rate that was realized both with traditional and selective thinning, and then we quantified the wood production. But we quantified the real production of chips, bioenergy production, but also a potential production of high quality timber that was also possible to extract and select from this kind of timber. So we can compare the potential and the real value of wood assortments. This was an economic impact of our project. Moreover, we also tried to estimate the recreational value of this forest, and this is an indirect method because to give an economic value to a cultural service, the only way is to find an indirect method, and we use the travel cost method, and which is based on the assumption that the cost which people incur to have a trip and to stay in a site represent the proxy of the value of this site. And so the main idea of this method is that the frequency of trips to a site decrease with the distance and increase as the travel distance is less. And it was realized a survey in field, and 200 visitors were interviewed with a questionnaire face-to-face, and personal information, but also the value they give to forest, and how they pay to have this trip was asked them. And so we used in particular an approach which is the zoned travel cost method, based on the idea that people living in predefined zones based on a certain distance from a site have the same cost of trip to arrive in a particular site. So the cost of trips for all points that are in a given zone is constant, and people are divided based on the zones they belong to. And so we divided our visitors based on the area they lived, and then we realized a logarithmic curve that is the total travel cost curve. And then we found that the recreational value per year of the area where the forests are located is 1,200 about. And this is an indirect method, and is based on cost to arrive on, but is a fast attempt to give an economic value also to products, to services that have not a value on the market. And another important part of the project and of the social input of the project is all the communication and dissemination action that we had. And for example, the project website, the project handbook, and a lot of other initiatives like brochure, video, but also a lot of technical meetings, both in the field and also networking, like for example in this case. And this was, in our ideas, an important social part of our project, and a great part was to make and to realize field day in the stands, in the forest stand, where we demonstrated and make simulation of the effect of the cut, and also of the way in which this kind of intervention have to be realized. And the dissemination action represent one of the most important part of our project. Thank you.
Imate li možda pitanja?